Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we get started, I want to ask you, what would it mean for you to be able to double or even triple your memory and ability to learn? So many people tell us that this skill would be absolutely life-changing for them, but they just don't have the time. They just don't have the time. So that's why we have developed, my team and I, a 5-day memory mastery crash course where we go into all the fundamental neuroscience and the actual techniques that are used by the world's best memory athletes and world record holders. It's a course that we value at $97, but here's the thing. We are actually giving this course away completely for free. All you have to do to enroll in the course is visit jle.vi/5. That's jle.vi/5. Greetings, super friends, and welcome to this week's episode. We don't have a review once again, so I'm going to ask you guys, please take a moment, go to jle.vi/podcast and leave us a review. We got a lot of wonderful people working very hard to deliver the episodes to you, and it just lights up their little faces when you leave a review. So please take a moment to do that. On to today's episode. Today we are joined by my fellow Genius Network members, Brian Grasso and Carrie Campbell. They are of Brian and Carrie in the Morning, a 5-day-a-week live show that used to offer daily mindset training. They are considered some of the top experts in mindset training, and they've even developed their own Eliminate Your Mindset system. They've actually spent decades together and individually in the trenches coaching and working with people and helping them reach their greatest levels of success and happiness in everything from health to wealth to relationships. They are, in case you didn't know, a happily married couple with an incredible story. They work together, they live together, they love together. And so we not only got into mindset and why it's so important, and we go way deeper, by the way, than just the fluff of you need to set your mindset for success. No, we actually go into what happens in the brain and how do you actually change your mindset, upgrade the way that you think so that you will succeed. But we also go into their secrets for having a wonderful power couple relationship, which I really enjoyed as I am always building my own relationship. So you guys are just going to love this episode. Brian and Carrie have such an incredible energy together. They're so complementary to one another. So enjoy. Brian and Carrie, welcome. I'm so glad we finally sorted the scheduling to get you guys on the show. How are you?
Good. We're great, man. Thank you for your patience.
My pleasure. I'm so excited to hear how quickly your business is growing. It's always a good reason for having scheduling woes when things are going well. So I'm super excited to have you guys on the show.
We are so jazzed to be here. And like you said, we're happy that we just finally got it locked and loaded. And we confirmed just before getting on to find out that we almost missed each other again because of a time zone thing. So I'm glad we're here.
Totally. We have a habit of missing each other. And I know I so meant to speak with both of you at the last Genius Network meeting, and we just didn't even cross paths. So I'm really excited. But for our audience who hasn't met you guys in person, doesn't know about you, I want to ask you guys, I read a little bit in the bio, but the biographies are never accurate. I want to hear in your words who you guys are, what you guys do, and what your massive gift is to the world that you guys are giving.
Oh, we have so many gifts. My goodness. No, I'm just joking. You know what? Let me start off by saying how much I love that. I think Carrie and I do a lot of speaking engagements worldwide. We do a lot of podcasts. And I find people reading our bio to be just one big snore fest. So that you've allowed us just to talk is perfect. My favorite story that describes you and I, Carrie, aside from the one where we got together, which is an awesome story. Maybe we'll tell it after. I don't know. But no, my background, professionally speaking, is primarily in high-performance athletics. I was a performance coach to Olympic and national team and pro athletes around the world, and a consultant as well to national governing bodies. And Carrie couldn't have been farther away on the spectrum of professional in that she's a licensed counselor who works primarily with children who had special needs and addicts and, everybody in between, really. So my background is in the mental, emotional, and physical performance of high-performing athletes. Carrie's background is in the mental health and functional integration of people who are having challenges in life for one reason or another. But one day, on a really odd whim, we sat in our kitchen, and Carrie, I remember the conversation started about 9 o'clock at night. Do you remember? Mm-hmm. And it went until about 4 o'clock in the morning. Because we just started talking about our respective, and this is early in our relationship, right? But we started talking about respective specialties, our professions, our experiences, and we noted one thing immediately that I don't think either one of us had noticed before. That my work with high-performing athletes and your work, Carrie, again, people with special needs and addicts, the path to salvation, the path to high performance, the path to an integrated, successful life was almost identical. Mm-hmm. And I think we were stunned by that, but I think most people are when they hear that. Mm-hmm. The things that you need from a mindset perspective when you are a child with special needs or an addict or a high-performing Olympic downhill skier are almost identical. And that's, I think, my favorite way to tell our story and what we bring to the world. We bring a very simple process of understanding your mindset and renovating it to be whatever it is you want it to be. How do you establish a growth mindset, a success-driven mindset in simple steps? That is our gift to the world.
Yeah. Well said.
I did that good.
I love it. So good. Anything to add to that, Carrie?
Yeah, I think that the one thing that I'll add is that everything that we do really focuses around the word sustainable. And that for me is, one of the things that I think that we recognize when we had that conversation all those years ago was that, everybody in my line of work, whether I was working with, a child with special needs or an addict or a troubled teen, everybody has something they want to change. But then making the change an integrated, sustainable change always was where the shortcoming was. People would gain success and traction for a short period of time, and then they would fall back into old patterns again. And so for us, a lot of the stuff that we've done has really been created around the notion of sustainable change, because, for us, really, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Jonathan, if you don't mind me interjecting there, because this is what Carrie and I do. You ask one great question and we talk for 27 minutes. But one thing I'll add to that, because Carrie's point is so relevant, is that we retain no cynicism or negativity about any of this stuff. But we often caution people regarding the actualities of mindset versus the way it's often sold. And what we mean by that is this. Motivational seminars are very, very popular. But pursuant to Carrie's point, we have to understand that the difference between having a state-regulated environmental burst of momentum or motivation is not the same thing as understanding how to renovate your own mindset for a sustainable period of time. And that mindset gets confused with motivation all the time in our society, and they couldn't be different ends of polar opposites.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to add. I told you we don't have a problem answering questions. I want to add to that because I think that we're in a world right now where the personal development industry for customers has become increasingly frustrating because everybody does the seminars, reads the books, and gets excited, and they see like the change that they can create for themselves. But yet they fall back into those old patterns that are keeping them stuck. Mm-hmm. And then that only further serves to reinforce a negative story of the fact that they're never going to be able to achieve what they want. And, when Brian and I looked at it all, it was like, we obviously had our own experiences with that in our past. But if you look at it all, the problem couldn't be with the products that were out there, right? The problem was that there was something that those products weren't meeting in the human being. And what they're not meeting in the human being, although they're all trying, is they're not meeting the true science behind the way the unconscious mind works and recreating patterns and, regrooving a new pathway to create that sustainable change. So when we created our Eliminate Your Limits system, that's what we kind of went into in order to really hone in on the core of mindset.
Wow, I love that. And now I want to ask you both a seemingly dumb question, but I have a very specific reason, which is, as you said, like, you can get so much, I call it Instagram wisdom, where it's like, your mindset is all this kind of like BS advice. But you guys are actually steeped in the work, and you've done the work, and you've worked with the clients. So I'm going to ask this dumb question. Why mindset? Why is mindset so important?
Oh, that's not dumb. That's the foundation. I love that you're going that direction. So I could do a 17-minute answer, but I promise to keep this one brief. Carrie touched on it in what she just said, and then Jonathan, your question speaks to it perfectly. Carl Jung, perhaps known as the godfather of modern-day psychology, he put it best. He said, unless or until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now, if I were to dissect that sentence pursuant to your question, I'd simply say this. There are invisible drivers and motivators that most people walk a lifetime without having any awareness to whatsoever. Those drivers are directing their actions, their habits, and their behaviors, unbeknownst to these people. And the lack of self-awareness as it relates to those drivers are what's causing the self-sabotage. So to state that another way, exactly how many more how-to business blueprint products need to be on the market? How many more how to lose weight effectively products need to be on the market? And I could go down the line to relationships, to wealth building. The amount of information related to how to that exists in the marketplace at large totals into the trillions at this point. And yet, as a society, we're still getting fatter. We're still in debt. We're still not building businesses well. We don't need to learn more information about how to lose weight. Is anyone confused that they should eat an apple instead of a Dorito? Do we really have a confusion about that still? Or are we self-sabotaging our own efforts because our unconscious drivers are pushing our actions, habits, and behaviors unbeknownst to us? So to answer your question flatly, mindset matters most. When you change your mindset, you change your perspective on everything, and everything changes. If you don't change your mindset, nothing changes.
Love it. I love that. So you guys developed, and I have to admit, I was sitting in the room at Genius Network, and you guys were talking, both of you, about your system, and everyone in the room was nodding. Like, everyone who's been in Genius Network longer than me was nodding, and they all knew so much about the system that you guys teach. I have to admit, I did not know, and I felt like the dumbest one in the room. But that's not the first time at Genius Network I felt like the dumbest one in the room. That's why I go there. Tell me about the system that you guys have developed.
To pare it down simply, Jonathan, there are 4 exercises that comprise our system. And yes, our system has several layers of depth. As we navigate our mindsets through phases of learning, and that's a really important foundation to understand. People listening right now who don't know our system, aren't familiar with mindset, they all sit in what's called unconscious incompetence. They don't know what they don't know about their own internal drivers and motivators. So we have to help them turn the lights on, so, become more self-aware. And then when we do that, we ascend up the phases of learning from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence to conscious competence, and then finally unconscious competence. But the way that works is a scientifically tested process that has been field tested by us to rave success. It's 4 exercises. Every single day, people must learn their language, count their wins, review their direction, and imagine their outcome. And you tell us, we're very happy to give you a very brief synopsis of each one of those 4 exercises, if time permits right now.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Before we go into the 4 pillars, the 4 exercises, let me just say this before we go into it. And I usually share this at the end, but as we're kind of going through it, people listening can envision this because, the way that they're created it's all about deconstructing the unconscious mind and then reconstructing it, right? So it's not enough just to become aware of what's going on in our unconscious mind. We actually have to rebuild and recreate. And that's actually one of the areas where we saw so many things were falling down for us that we had tried in the self-help industry, is that we would either go through programs and experiences or read books that would bring us to the breakthrough. They would deconstruct and it would bring us into awareness of where we were self-sabotaging and then kind of leave us hanging. And I mean, we've talked about this and we host free events where people come and listen to this and everybody is so in agreement with that experience that we've all had the breakthrough moment, but then what? Yeah. And then the other side of that we see in the self-help industry is that if we don't go through the awareness phase, there's so much out there that talks about adaptability. Go and change this, change your behaviors, change your actions without actually going through the process of understanding what's driving those actions. So the 4 pillars really are about finishing the job. It's really about the home run of finishing the job and bringing you into sustainability and a lifetime practice of it.
Do you want me to...
Let's just roll.
Well, here are our 4 pillars. These are the exercises we'd like you to do every single day. The first one, and there's no particular order to this, Jonathan, but the first one's called Learn Your Language. Now, the way we always teach this is very, very simple. Everybody listening right now, just go into a self-assessment paradigm, okay? Am I talking to you when I say these words? And here they are. You speak to yourself in your own head in a way that you would never allow anybody else to talk to you. You are abusive, you are mean, you are vitriolic to yourself, you complain. I mean, that's the human condition. There's a great book called Buddha's Brain that actually outlines the human brain has been developed over evolutionary times to be very negative. So learn your language is the first step, and it's what Carrie just said. We have to deconstruct what's in the unconscious first, but in order to deconstruct it, we have to know what's there. So learn your language simply means you're going to start paying close attention to how you and your body are talking to yourself. Do you want to explain that one?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really simple to get started on this. 5 to 10 minutes every morning. We do encourage people doing it in the morning because if you have negative thoughts going on, which, most people do, why not tend to them when you're kicking off your day rather than carrying them through the day? We've all been there where we've had negative thoughts in us in the morning and we don't, we kind of just let them permeate throughout the day. So you spend 5 to 10 minutes sitting quietly or, being mindful, whatever that means to you. It could be going for a walk. It could be getting ready for your day where you're purposely listening to what your thoughts are saying. What is going on, in your language? Now, language presents itself in 4 different ways. It presents itself in our inner thoughts. So what's going on in our mind, in our feelings, in our physical symptoms, meaning, what is your body telling you? Our bodies are just so amazing at speaking to us. And then in our behaviors, things like procrastination, for example, is a great way to talk about language as it pertains to behavior. So you spend 5 to 10 minutes every day paying attention to that, writing it down, and bringing it into awareness so that the other 4 pillars really take over from there and do the rest of the work.
Exactly. Now, we could keep going, Jonathan, but did you want to interject and shut us up for a second? Or
No, not at all. Not at all. You guys are making my job so easy. Just keep, and I'll come back, in a few. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, keep going. Keep going.
Awesome. Well, that was the first of our 4 pillars. The second is called Count Your Wins. And this is a big one. Carrie and I were hard pressed by anybody to say, okay, guys, you have 4 exercises. I only have time or desire to do one of them. Which one should I do? We'd probably tell you to count your wins. And here's why. Carrie made a great point. Most often when we wake up in the morning, the language is negative. We're dreading the day. We're tired. We're acknowledging how tired we are. We're complaining about the weather. We're worried about this or fearing that. So we know inherently that most people wake up in that sort of negative mental spin, okay? But the problem is that goes on throughout the day in a very unconscious way. It's an amazing thing to watch because, and I want to put another test to everybody listening right now, because the number of people who said to Carrie and I over the years, oh no, I'm a very positive person. Until we give them these exercises to do, most people aren't nearly as positive as they think they are. it's almost like a mirage where we've been taught and conditioned through society to feign positivity, but underneath the layers, we're actually quite negative and fearful and worried and anxious. So Count Your Wins ranks as a very important exercise because it regrooves synaptic connections in your actual gray matter in your brain. And the exercise is so simple. You're going to simply enumerate all the things that you did that day that were good, that walked you towards your goals, that marched you one step closer. No matter how insignificant or how small they may appear, we are going to count them on purpose.
Yeah. Again, super simple. I've said that twice. I'm going to keep saying it because we really want for people to know. But we encourage people to count their wins in the evening, because in the evening, our unconscious doesn't stop working, right? So we go to bed and it's going to muse on whatever is in your mind as you go to sleep. So rather than having negativity there, we encourage people to put in more serving language. So you reflect on your day, your last 24 hours, and you list your wins as pertains very specifically to where you're going in life. Counting wins is different than counting gratitudes, because we often get that question, it's like a gratitude list. And the difference is it's not like a gratitude list. And a lot of people's experience with gratitude lists is that, after doing them for 2 days, they 2 weeks, they become rote and patterned. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my house, et cetera, et cetera. Because gratitude tends to be very external as it's been positioned in gratitude. What am I grateful for? What things am I grateful for? But counting your wins it's an internal win count. You're reflecting on where you are, where you're going, where you've been. And it can be wins can be so small. Like any day, I've had so many clients message me and they'll be like, I don't have any wins today. And I was like, yes, you do. Let's go and find one. And I always make the point, well, you messaged me to tell me you didn't have any wins today rather than sitting there being grumpy. So that's a win. You reached out to me, right? So we all have wins. And it's so powerful because in the morning, you're learning your language. And then in the evening, and we'll obviously add in the other two pillars, but in the evening, you're reforming a story that's more serving than it is negative, right? And I just want to interject here really quickly with a story because I think it's the perfect time. What we are talking about, some people might be like, gosh, that's so simple. Like that really is so simple. How is it that can reprogram my unconscious mind completely, right? And we're not unfamiliar with skepticism from people. I think that the truth of the matter is with what so many people have gone through in trying to achieve their goals, it makes sense that people have skepticism and are cynical, right? So we have one particular story that stands out. We have a client who's actually over in Scotland. And she found us about a year and a half now, maybe, on YouTube. Now, the way she found us is just so unbelievable. She was literally sitting on her floor in her living room, writing a suicide note to her 2 children, and happened to have YouTube scrolling at the same time. And she came across one of our videos. And she put the pen down, stopped writing the suicide note, and started watching. From there, she reactivated her Facebook account in order to come and tune into our daily show that we had running back then. And she started, just watching and joining every day. She did the 4 pillars every day for a year. Not only has she not had suicidal tendencies since then, but she was on 32 antidepressant pills a day and is 100% medication free, happy and thriving in life now from doing these 4 pillars. So I wanted to provide that for people listening to demonstrate the absolute power that it creates.
Totally. And, I believe it because my background is all learning and memory. And we know from stuff like Hebb's law, neurons that fire together, wire together, you can reshape the way your brain works and you can recreate memories and you can change literally the chemistry, but also the physiology of your brain and teach it to be a happy and positive brain. I mean, to me, this is like, of course, it's just, how do you do it? As you said, like information is not the problem. It's sitting down and actually doing the practice.
Right.
A quick shout out to you, Jonathan. You're one of the only memory people I've ever come across to. I actually think your stuff is world class and fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm so bored of memory experts because I disagree with most of them, but your stuff is just top quality, top drawer, and I agree with everything you say.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely, man. Well, continue the trend. Number 3, because everyone's just bated breath right now.
Right.
What's the third exercise? It's called review your direction. This one's a no-brainer. No pun intended. I just realized that. But it's an important one as well. So on a worldwide survey conducted, I read not too many years ago, they were talking about goals and New Year's resolutions. And they showed that just the number of millions of people who creates goals and New Year's resolutions around the world is off the charts. You're talking about 250 million Americans a year create goals and New Year's resolutions. But the over-under on the statistical analysis is stunning. Only about 8% of people who actually create goals and resolutions actually achieve them. 92% of people fail. There's probably 15 to 20 mechanisms why that's true. But here's one of them, and it speaks to our third pillar, which again is called review direction. People get very excited about the idea of achieving a goal. They get very excited about the idea of renovating parts of their lives, but then the follow-through is virtually vacant. Review your direction simply means that you are going to think about and talk about your goal on a regular basis. It's going to become part of your customary habits. While you're driving to work, you're thinking about your goal. While you're in the shower in the morning, you're thinking about your goal. You're talking to your wife, your husband, your kids, your friends, your dad, your cousin. You want to verbalize your goal on a regular basis. And the reason you do that, very simply, is there's something called top of the mind awareness. One of the major factors that people are not achieving their goals is they get excited while they're conceiving the goal, but then they don't do anything from a follow-up perspective to make that goal become part of the top of their mind every single day. And Carrie and I are big on the whole concept of articulation. Talk about what you intend to achieve on a regular basis. It imprints that goal as a top of the mind awareness, and you are going to be shocked at how that step alone starts to catalyze a series of new actions, habits, and behaviors that appear before your eyes.
Yeah, absolutely right. I feel so passionately about this one in particular because, obviously I think so many people, they want more for themselves and they just don't have it and they don't know how to get there, right? And, you set the goal, but then before you know it, all that negative language takes over again. You start self-sabotaging. So it's the why bother phase, right? So direction review is really about like Brian said, the repetition every day. So every day you're going to stop. You're going to ask yourself, what's the goal that you have? And then you're going to reflect on it. Where are you going? Why are you going there? What has happened over the last 6 months, 12 months, 24 hours that's helped you move towards that goal? What's it going to feel like when you get there? And you're really just in this like repetitive place where every single day we have it actually built out as one exercise that you sit down and you do it as an exercise. But then the full immersion of bringing it into your day is like, it just only further enhances the expedience that we can have at achieving that goal, right? I always make the joke that if people were to live in our house, they would think that Brian and I don't talk about anything else but ourselves because we're always talking about our vision and what we're creating and the people we work with. Like our conversation just revolves around our direction all the time because we know that if we're not revolving our conversation and our thoughts around our direction, our unconscious mind is going to take over and it's going to revolve it around something that's not going to be serving to us, right? So we have to be proactive in that.
Yeah, and before I go on to the fourth pillar, let me just say one more thing to that, Carrie. And, it's even in accordance to what Jonathan was talking about regarding his specialty in memory and brain physiology and changing the brain. One of the things to understand about mindset, it's a tricky little slope, but it's so easy practically when you get it, right? One of the reasons that Carrie and I are so emphatic about people talking about their goal out loud, not just in their heads, is because it also countervenes natural tendencies. And that's the key. Look at one of the reasons that people have such a hard time achieving goals in life is because they start to self-doubt immediately after creating the goal.
Right.
And so the articulation process or reviewing your direction constantly, it countervenes that natural tendency. And that's an important thing. If we're going to change the physiology and the synaptic connections, not just the unconscious story, but the actual gray matter of the brain, we have to countervene natural tendencies as much as we have to proactively build new ones.
Right. And I want to add to that because this is like, I'm going to share this and people are going to be like, oh, that makes so much sense. But it's amazing to me how many people don't think this way. There is nothing in the personal fitness realm. Okay, let's just take physical fitness, for example. There's nothing in our physical fitness realm that we don't recognize requires repetition in order to achieve our goal. No one on the planet would think that they can go to the gym once, get a workout, and that they're good to go for the rest of their life. No one would think that they can eat one good clean meal or clean meals for 1 week and have optimal health. As a society, we know that. As a society, we accept that. And of course, we strive towards creating that for ourselves, right? But nobody would scratch their heads and think, oh, you're telling me I got to go to the gym more than once to achieve optimal physical fitness? It's the same thing for mindset. And the reason I say that is because oftentimes when doing direction review, people will say to us, well, it's so redundant. Like, I feel like I just said this yesterday. And we're like, yes, exactly. How many times have you squatted to perfect your squat and you keep squatting? So what we always tell people is that you have to recognize that your mindset is a muscle, just like your body and everything else. And it requires constant repetition, no matter how redundant it seems. Our mind is not any different than our body in that regard, and yet we don't integrate that as a concept.
Great point. Let me finish the job of the fourth pillar. This one, by the way, this last pillar, Jonathan, happens to be my personal favorite, and it's called Imagine Your Outcome. Now, on a preamble to this exercise, let me explain something very important for everyone listening, because Imagine Your Outcome is exactly that. We want you to play in your imagination. We want you to dance and enjoy rainbows and puppies and sunshine all in your imagination. And very often adults will look at us and say, wait a second, are you suggesting you want me just to sit there every day and imagine stuff? Like, I'm a grown adult, I don't imagine. And so our answer is always the same. If you've ever felt anxiety or fear or worry, you're already imagining stupid shit. So how about you just change what you're imagining? Because everything you're worried about hasn't happened right now. It's a potential of the future. That's called imagination. The world is gripped by anxiety and worry and stress and fear. And all of those things add up to a bunch of stuff we're just imagining we're worried about. It's not real stuff per se. So the key to Imagine Your Outcome is to understand the way the unconscious works. Now, the unconscious mind is a very powerful instrument. It completely controls and directs all of our actions, habits, and behaviors. But for all of that power, it's inherently stupid, which means it doesn't know what is real versus what is imagined. The reason we have anxiety and stress and fear is not because those things we're worried about or afraid of or anxious towards. It's not that they're real. It's that we're convincing our unconscious mind they're real by having a repetitious and emotional experience with the imagination of them over and over and over again. So what this exercise means is simply, what exactly do you want your outcome to be? What exactly do you want it to look like and feel like? Now, imagine that every day for as long as you want. Jonathan, I sit in my imagination relentlessly every day. I don't really own a computer. I don't sit at a desk and do work. I love going outside. Carrie and I go for hikes a lot. We live on 1.5 acres of property. I love going splitting wood and working in my garden. And what I do while we're hiking, while we're training in the gym, while I'm splitting wood or working in the garden, is I'm constantly playing a short movie clip in the back of my mind of all the things that Carrie and I are working towards in life. It's playing constantly, and it's very emotive. It sometimes gives me belly flies when I really start to play with it well. And that is an amazingly powerful exercise because the unconscious mind has built a story from your experiences and influences to date. And all we want to do is change that narrative to one that's serving you. Because when we do, all your actions, habits, behaviors, perspectives, perceptions, belief systems, etc., will navigate to the new narrative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to reinforce one more time because it's just so important. This is a consistency of application that people, they need to commit to themselves. Like we have never, when you think about the academic system, we go to school and we're programmed to learn information, right? But we have never been taught how to think. We have never been taught how to navigate our thoughts and how to recognize our thoughts and how to change our thoughts. There are lots of things out there that try and do it. And, most schools now are trying to do mindfulness stuff, but it's still not getting to the core of it, right? Of really, really tuning into your thoughts and how to navigate them. And, Brian and I, we practice these 4 pillars every day. We've done so much work that we do imagine unconsciously. We do imagine serving things unconsciously. We do review our direction and our language unconsciously now because we've been practicing this for 8 years. But even at that point, we still do our 4 pillars 90 minutes a day together. Now, everybody doesn't have to do 90 minutes a day. We just happen to eat, sleep, and breathe mindset. And we know that this is our path to our greatest life, happiness, success. But full immersion is what we do, and we'll do it forever because we know the value of it.
Wow. Now, I have a tough question for you both. When I first started realizing the power of visualization, it was along about the time that I got exposed to a lot of Eckhart Tolle's work and this idea of also accepting what I have. And it was a real struggle for me, especially as an entrepreneur, and I was a young entrepreneur at the time, balancing this idea of being happy with what I have versus, the 4th stage, which is visualizing myself achieving all the goals. And it's like, how do you guys balance that? Because step 2 is all the things that I'm doing well and that I appreciate and that I love. And step 4, I think for people, they could see a difficulty balancing that.
Do you want to go first? Or?
Let me just chime in real quick on that one. Interestingly enough, I got levied a question to me several years ago. And it was a very it was a random experience. I'm known for changing my hairstyle all the time. And one of our friends said to me, you're never happy. You're always changing yourself. Are you ever going to just be happy with yourself? And I remember scratching my head almost. And I was like, I don't understand the question because I am happy. But I investigated because I was curious, right? And that was about 8 years ago. I came up with this term that we use all the time called positively dissatisfied, which for me it was the way that I integrated that understanding for myself. I am 100% content, blissful, happy with where I'm at in life, but I have this positive dissatisfaction for always wanting to ascend and be the better version of myself and constantly moving towards that. It's not a negative experience. So the positive dissatisfaction of it implies that I'm perfectly happy where I am, but I know that I always have another level I can climb, and I find that in a serving way.
Yeah, and I'm going to add my 2 cents this way. Spirituality is a topic that sometimes turns people off. But Jonathan, for me, the entire process in our system and everything Carrie and I teach is a blend of science and spirituality. But we have to understand how we define spirituality first. Carrie and I don't attach the term spirituality to any given religion, although we are completely supportive of whatever anyone chooses. But spirituality to us means simply the process of understanding and discovering yourself. It's a metaphysical process. It is not a tangible thing necessarily. Now, the reason I bring that up is very, very simple. I have an extensive formal education in spiritual pursuits and have been teaching spiritual concepts for the better part of 2.5 decades now. And Taoism ranks as one of the most prominent philosophies I love to draw on regarding your question. And here's why. The central theme of Taoism is a term called Wu Wei, which translates into English as effortless action or no forcing. Now, why that matters so much is simply this. The concept of no forcing means that, especially young entrepreneurs like the one you described in yourself, we have this societal influence that's always telling us in order to create or achieve what it is we want, we have to hustle and drive and go nonstop. But in essence, for most people, that is classically trying to force something as opposed to going with the natural ebb and flow of it. I draw so much strength in that when it comes to your question, because as a young entrepreneur myself, I learned to draw complete contentment to where I was, even in the balance of where I wanted to be and where I knew I was going, simply by releasing myself to the natural order that nature, for example, is never in a hurry, but it always gets it done. And when you really acclimatize to that kind of philosophy, everything changes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also came to a similar conclusion as Carrie said, which is it ultimately came down to, for me, happiness. It was, am I working from a place of happiness, or am I working towards trying to achieve happiness?
Yeah, well
and
said.
that was like this mind-blowing moment of, holy crap, you know what I mean? I can be happy and still want more.
Yes.
Yeah. You know,
Well said.
we would often as well, we would speak to that as from like the standpoint of like, what are your drivers, right? What are the drivers behind it? You know, you just said your driver is happiness, right? You are happy. That's your driver. So many people are so out of touch of what their drivers are, which is why, you know, the 4 pillars is so important for people to go through, you know, and a variety of the other programs that we offer where people can really understand themselves. Because people don't know that what's driving them going to Zumba class 5 days a week is, you know, necessarily a comparative story about their sister-in-law who goes to Zumba and looks fit, right? And scarcity and fear. Like, we don't know our drivers. And the more intimately familiar we become with ourselves, the more we're able to source out what those drivers are that are behind us propelling the actions forward.
I love that. I love that. Now, I want to intentionally shift gears because I know you guys talked about mindset every day for years, but I want to shift gears because I think anyone listening is thinking what I'm thinking, which is what an incredible power couple you two are, and what an unbelievably supportive, loving, and collaborative relationship you guys have. So I want to just bring that up. I want to put it on the table, and I want to ask you guys to tell a little bit about your marriage and your relationship and how it started. I know in your bio it says it didn't start as rainbows, but you guys work together, live together, love together. And so I just want to know how you do it.
Yeah.
Golly, there's so much to that, but it's something we love talking about. We've often joked that if we decide to change our business model and only work with couples who are entrepreneurs together, we would do fantastically well because we've lived it.
Yeah.
And I think the first order of business is to acknowledge and accept where things aren't going right, quite frankly. I think that there's a great deal of reason, and societal influence is one of them. And I think, Carrie, we lived that mirage for some time.
Yep.
Until we realized that things weren't going as well as we wanted them to. And that had nothing to do with business. That had to do with our relationship.
Yeah.
We often refer to that as step number 1 as acceptance. Acceptance of it doesn't have to be this way, but we realize that right now it is this way.
Yeah.
That's where it started for us. I love the way, Carrie, you talk about I had stories, you had stories, we brought them together. So why don't I shut it for a second and let you talk? Because the way you frame this is so good.
Yeah, well, let me just start by qualifying this. It actually was rainbows when we first met, which is, you know, and I think that that's really important to highlight because I do a lot of coaching in relationships. And for so many people, we come together into a relationship and it is a Cinderella story in the beginning. And that's what Brian and I experienced. And I won't belabor the story, quite honestly, because Brian tells it better than me. But we lived in 2 different countries. We had met 3 years prior to the time that we actually came together back in 2006. It was 2009 now, and Brian and I were both single. And you know, we didn't really have communication with each other. We weren't really connected at all. We had met in 2006 when Brian had come up to do an event for the company that I worked with. And when he tells the story, he always says that he fell in love with me at that event. So I love that part.
It's so true.
But in 2009, one morning, I woke up to a message from Brian basically saying, you know, I fell in love with you the day I met you. And I just need to share that with you. And from there, it just, we got on the phone and we started talking, and we spent 3 nights in a row on the phone from 9 p.m. to 5 o'clock in the morning. And we just knew that this was going to happen and we were going to be together. And I had 2 kids from a previous marriage, so I couldn't move. So we literally picked up. We were engaged before we kissed. We didn't live together.
Oh.
Brian picked up and moved to Montreal in February of 2010 to start a life together because it felt so right. So it did start like a fairy tale romance. But then very quickly after we moved together, we've always been happy and in love. What we came to realize was we both had some really powerful unconscious stories that were creating a mess, an absolute mess. And, when I'm coaching couples, I try to bring them back to this reality. Most couples don't actually have relationship problems. What they have is their own unconscious, non-serving stories. So Brian came into our relationship with his own negative stories that were built in his unconscious. I had unconscious stories that I had no idea. I was in an abusive marriage prior to Brian. I had no idea the unconscious stories that left on me as an imprint until I was in a relationship together. So you take 2 people who have these unconsciouses that are negative and not serving, and you bring them together. And what happens is his stories collide with my stories, and they create these new negative unconscious story patterns that sabotage relationships. And then everybody thinks that the relationship is the problem rather than really peeling back the layers of understanding what is it in me that was creating those bad patterns.
I'm just going to add one thing, because our own 4 pillars helped salvage us initially.
Yeah.
But then, and this is going to sound kind of hokey, Jonathan, but let me go a roundabout on this. I was perusing Facebook. I don't know, Carrie, you were perusing Facebook yesterday.
Yep.
And an ad caught your attention. Mm-hmm. It said 6 new reasons why you should never eat McDonald's French fries. Right. And so you jokingly said, I got to read that, right? So she opened up the ad and it came to an article, and you stopped reading after reason number 1. And here's why. Because reason number 1 was that McDonald's French fries have a lot of salt. Right? And so the reason I say that, I know it sounds like an end around, but I'm so bored of couple entrepreneurs or, advice for couples being, well, make sure you turn your phones off at 8 p.m. every night so you can spend time together. That's superficial nonsense. Like, I already know McDonald's has fries have salt. Right. We don't need the stupid advice that everybody already knows, right? So Carrie's points are valid, but here's another practical thing for everyone listening regarding intimate relationships, spousal relationships. Carrie and I adopted something we actually call the pillars. And it's a modification off of our own 4 pillars. But these are the things that Carrie and I realized that needed to be present daily for us to sustain a beautiful, healthy, intimate, happy relationship, okay? And not all of, again, the superficial advice, turn your phone off at 8. That's it? That's going to fix everything, getting off your iPhone at 8 o'clock? So here's what we realized. Carrie and I are both athletes, which means food matters to us. When we are consuming quality food that matches what we both enjoy eating but nourishes us as athletes, our entire mood and temperament changes towards each other. That's number 1. Number 2, we're athletes. We want to move every day. So if we're not at the gym, we're hiking or going for a walk, but we do these physical pursuits together. So that's the second thing, is we move every day. The third thing is that we spend quality time together every day, specifically in intellectual pursuits. Carrie and I talk all the time. It's not scheduled, but our relationship is such that the number 1 attraction factor I had for my wife was her brain. And here we are 9 years into our marriage, and that brain is still what, is my fantasy. I mean, Carrie's a highly intelligent woman, and I love her insights in life. So every day we talk. It's not a scheduled event. It's not a topic-oriented event, but we sit down with coffee and talk every single day. And then the last thing is sex and intimacy. The next person who tells me that I have, 2 kids and a mortgage, I have no time for sex. We have 2 kids. We have a thriving business. We have 2 puppies on top of it all. And yet intimacy is an important part of our world. And we've made it that way, not by scheduling it, not by saying it has to happen every day, but by having an understanding towards each other that physical intimacy matters to both of us with each other. So we eat quality foods, we move together, we intellectually look at things and discuss things every day, and sex and intimacy are part of our culture in our relationship. It's not an add-on or a bonus once in a while.
Right.
So those are things to consider.
Yeah, and I have got to add to that because this is really, really important for me. Those things, the problem 8 years ago was, yes, all of those things would fall down. But 8 years ago, it wasn't as easy of saying, okay, well, let's schedule to have sex. Or let's make because that's the bullshit that's out there in the relationship world now. You've got to schedule sex for yourselves. You've got to, there's that whole Indian stick thing. You hold the stick and I won't interrupt you. That goes back to everything we said before about the 4 pillars. That is an adaptation that we're trying to make before fixing what's really going on in the unconscious stories that's driving our behaviors. Because 8 years ago, those things weren't consistently present in our life. But it wasn't a matter of just deciding to have sex every day. It was a matter of us understanding more about ourselves. Because the couples who are out there who are not communicating regularly, who are not having, sex to the frequency they want, who aren't, pursuing life as a couple together, it's not because they don't know how to schedule something into their calendar. There is a limit that is in the way of them getting there. And I think that it's imperative that every couple go through doing the work together like this in order to grow together and evolve together.
Love that. I really, really love that. I love that insight of just, I often think, and I, as you guys know, recently became engaged, and I've come to realize exactly what you guys said about the stories and the way that I got into it, into the relationship that is just doing a lot of self-work and reading a lot of books and doing, I like to say, like 10 weeks of therapy in a matter of months to figure out what those stories were and the way that I viewed myself and the way that I viewed my to-be partner. And it really all starts with knowledge of self. The Apollo at Delphi had it right. But then once you have that knowledge of self, that's essentially useless until you're able to communicate that and say, I'm feeling this. And I often say that open communication is like layers of an onion.
Right.
You can never believe, wow, there's so many more layers, and you get really, really deep, and you can go so much further where you think you're communicating everything. You think you're being completely open. And then you're like, well, there was that one thing. And I just decided to, not say anything in that moment, even though I was hurt by it because I didn't think it was a big deal. But that, you can go deeper and you can go be that completely open, honest person. And I don't think that person ever ends.
Yeah.
Well, of course not. Yeah, well said.
The other thing that I want to add is that when Brian and I, when we got together 8 years ago, we knew very quickly we were going to be in business together. And we made a priority of our business, our health, and our relationship. We didn't grow our business and ignore our health and our relation. And look, let's face it, in the entrepreneurial world, we all know those people who've got massively thriving businesses, but their relationships are falling apart and their health is in complete destruction. We consciously made a choice not to do it that way. We consciously made a choice to evolve on all parallels at the same time in order to create the best possible version of ourselves. Of course, for ourselves individually and ourselves as a couple, but in order to do the work that we're doing in the world, it really is one of those practice what you preach kind of philosophies, if I were to be honest.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to get an update before I let you guys go. I know we're running up on time here. What are the projects that you guys are working on right now? You guys aren't still doing the daily show. I don't remember you guys doing the daily show. What are you guys working on, and where can people check out more and learn more from you?
Absolutely. Well, you can still find us over on Facebook. Our Facebook page is Brian and Carrie. That's the best place to reach us. Anybody can pop a message in there, follow us over there. We have an amazing team of ambassadors who make sure everybody is tended to immediately. But we did host a 5-day-a-week morning show, Brian and Carrie in the Morning, that we ran for about a year and a half, 392 episodes. It was amazing. Organically, we reached 250,000 people. It was amazing. But, we review our direction so much that our direction shifted 6 months earlier than it was anticipated by essentially taking what we were doing on the show into a live tour. So we were supposed to kick off, the Eliminate Your Limits tour in 2019. But back in June, we decided to kick that up a degree, and we closed the show and we started our live tour, which we're currently hosting in Philly and Montreal, in Montreal, Canada, and then we'll expand out to a variety of other places.
And let me add one more thing, if I could. My part of the company is based on our educational process. We certify coaches as Eliminate Your Limit mindset specialists. And I think, Jonathan, one of the greatest benefits of our program is simply this. There are 14 gazillion coaches of varying stripes in the world, and very few of them are actually earning a living doing what they want to do, which is help people. So not only is our certification process about equipping you to be the greatest mindset coach on the planet, it also carries with it a complete business process so you can earn a living and build a business as a coach.
Love that. Awesome. Brian and Carrie, I really want to thank you because I super enjoyed this conversation. And finally, after crossing paths, getting to know you guys a little bit, I do want to ask before I completely let you go, and I always ask this, and sometimes guests don't love this question because it's a hard one, but if people take away one really important lesson from everything we talked about, what is the one thing that you hope that they don't forget?
Oh, that's easy for me, actually.
I wonder if our answers
right? Consistency of doing the work creates sustainability that you're seeking in life.
That's crazy because mine's exactly the same. I have an equation. Carrie and I teach it to everybody. Simplicity plus consistency equals success in anything. Success is not a mystery. It's about doing the simple things every day.
There you go.
I love it. You guys are awesome. I just adore you. I adore your energy. Such a pleasure. I really hope my fiance and I can hang out with you next time we're in Phoenix.
Let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for your time. This has been great, Jonathan. Thank you very much.
Pleasure was all mine. Take care, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.
All right, super friends, that is all we have for you today. But I hope you guys really enjoyed the show, and I hope you learned a ton of actionable information, tips, advice that will help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If you've enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or drop us a quick little note on the Twitter machine at GoSuperhuman. Also, if you have any ideas for anyone out there who you would love to see on the show, we always love to hear your recommendations. You can submit on our website, or you can just drop us an email and let us know. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.